I've started recording for everyone. I almost forgot. Just for the recording, we are looking at Chapter 3, and we will be discussing Chapter 3 in just a minute. About 2 more minutes, unless everyone's done.
And are we looking for a single sentence definition? Or can it be longer?
It can be longer. It's good to have a simple definition, but it can be a sentence or longer. Okay. Let's discuss. Daniel, what's your definition for type?
Okay. It is a typeset text or any specifically shaped reproducible characters, even metal sorts used for prints, used for printing letter forms.
Okay. So it's a broad term, any reproducible character.
Yeah.
Okay. What's a typeface?
It's a collection of letter forms that have been especially designed to go together.
Okay. So what's the difference between a typeface and a font?
So the difference is that for a font,
Because the font,
it's necessary for typesetting.
okay. So a font includes what that a typeface doesn't include?
A specific typeface?
Well, like all the other stuff that are not letters, like the punctuation, the exclamation point. So a typeface is just the letters. And then if once you have a font, then you have added all the other marks that go with what we consider the letters. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What is a type style?
A type style it refers to like a modified version of the typeface, and it's basically when you apply like bold or italics to a font.
Right. Okay. And then what is a type? Did you have type family, or is that the next person?
I think that's the next person, but
That's
I mean,
me.
I see the definition.
No, never mind. That's right. That is okay. So that's the difference. So we got a font can be anything that's printable. The typeface is the letters. The font is the marks that go with the letters, and the style is like you take the letters and make them bold or italic. Who is next? Was that Noah?
Yeah.
What's a type family?
All right, this is kind of hard because it gives me two definitions, but I'll try giving.
Okay.
Do you want a single sentence one or just a two sentence?
You can say two sentences.
All right, so it's a collection of type that includes a specific typeface and all type styles of that typeface.
Okay.
And then the second one is a category that type is classified into based on historical origin and physical characteristics of the letter forms. And that's on page 65. Since it's kind of a longer definition, I would suggest looking on that.
So, for example, we sometimes refer to as like, but a lot of you guys like Bodoni, and that is a whole family of type, and it refers to a pretty broad set because it's been around a while, so people have added a lot of stuff to it. So, and it's a little tricky, the definition between font, type style, and type family. And so a type style is italic or bold, whereas a family can include extended, condensed, all the other extra thin. Some typefaces have lots of versions that can go with a family. Okay, Noah, what'd you have next?
I think it was
letter?
black letter. Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Okay. On page 67, if you're wondering.
Yep.
It's a narrow, heavy, sharp, angular lettering style designed to emulate Gothic medieval scripts.
Okay. And so Gothic medieval scripts were created how? With what?
Pen and ink.
Just a pen on paper. Yep, pen and ink on paper. So they were designed to look like type when it was done before it was any type of printing press. Okay. What do you have next? Humanist?
Yeah. All right. So it's an organic, heavy, rounded, low contrast family of Roman typefaces based on the white lettering style. And,
okay.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things we want to point out is, so it looks like handwriting and organic, and the contrast between the different strokes is not much, low contrast. Okay. And you have old style?
Yeah, I just have to pull it back up. I lost the page.
Oops. Page 80.
Page 80. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. All right. An old style. It's a family of Roman typefaces, which looks slightly less calligraphic than the humanist predecessors or humanist font. So I'll just say that they were more precise, appeared lighter, and had more contrast.
Okay. And how about yeah, so a little bit more contrast. What about the difference in the
Serif?
there's some serifs, or what about the ascenders versus the cap height? Are they the same? They go above the cap height. That's
yeah,
the real
they go
difference.
above. Yeah.
Yep. So the ascender of a lowercase letter goes over on top of the cap height in the old style typefaces. Okay. So is that your last word, old style?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So class, let's all go back really quickly to page 68 to just look at the black letter type forms. And obviously these can be emulated today if you go out and buy a pen, a calligraphy pen from, you know, Cheap Joe's or someplace. And a lot of people can write like this still. So it's very handwriting based and somewhat hard to read. So some people use black letter fonts as display fonts, which we'll talk about in a minute. But they're not used much for any type of graphic design, especially if you really want to read it. The readability is not too great. Then humanist type fonts. Let's look on page 72. Jensen, people love that typeface. I know that's some people's very favorite typeface. There's a lot of different versions of that. A lot of people like the small cap version of Jensen. Where is Legacy? Legacy and Souvenir on page 77 and 78. A lot of people, a lot of designers love Legacy and versions of that because it's nice and clean, especially italic cap. Capital letters in the italic, which is nice looking. And then an old style, Caslon, people love that. An old style Bimbo, some people that's their favorite typeface. I don't like that. I have to say, I do like Gaudi. That's a nice one. A lot of people use that. I was a big fan of Palatino at a certain point in the 90s. That's gone a little bit out of favor. I think it's a nice reading typeface, a little modern looking, especially for an old style typeface, but I liked it. A lot of people are not that happy. And the Noontime Drone, and people just love that. It's a great typeface.
Interesting.
Okay.
Italic,
Transitional. Who had that? Was that you, Jenny?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us what that is.
Transitional type. It says a family of Roman typefaces from the 18th century, reflecting the stylistic transition from the old style typefaces. Modern ones of the 19th. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and all of the revival. Oh, sorry, I messed up. I'll read it again. A family of Roman typefaces from the 18th century, reflecting the stylistic transition from the old style typefaces of the 16th and 17th centuries to the modern ones of the 19th century and all the revival fonts that were designed to look like them.
Okay. Great. It's transitional. What about modern typefaces?
Modern, a precise mechanical family of Roman typefaces that developed in the late 18th and 19th centuries, ushering in the modern age and all the revival fonts that were designed to look like them. These typefaces tend to have narrow set widths, high contrast, lightly bracketed or unbracketed serifs, short X height ratios, and a vertical angle of stress.
Right. So that's the thing. High contrast of the strokes within the letter. So that's, for example, Dido is in there. Bodoni. Okay. What is next? Egyptian.
Yeah. The Egyptian type family category is also called the slab serif because of its characteristic heavy unbracketed serifs. Egyptian typefaces are generally heavy, have low contrast, and often have a vertical angle of stress.
Okay. So they have that strange slab serif, which is somewhat unusual. Were Egyptian typefaces created in Egypt? That's a trick question. It's not in there. No.
I don't think
So,
so.
no, they were not created in Egypt. A lot of people think Egyptian typefaces were somehow created in the Middle East or in Egypt or North Africa. So, no, that's just the name they gave them. Has to do with the time. And did you have sans serif, or was Egyptian your last one, Jenny?
Yeah, I think that was my last one.
Okay, your last one. Okay. So let's look back a little bit. So look back at page 91. So Baskerville, one of the most famous transitional fonts, used quite often. Then the modern font, Dito, people love that. If you look on page 101 and 100, Bodoni, high contrast, used quite often. And then Dito, also used a lot. It's even in type war. Very thin stroke. Okay. The Egyptian typefaces, I don't know if they're used as much. Typewriter every once in a while. Some people like Rockwell. Okay. Nick, tell us about sans serif faces.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sans serif, a family of typefaces encompassing all typefaces without serifs. That's on page 117.
Yep. Okay. So tell us about the difference between grotesque and geometric.
All right. Grotesque. Grotesque is a characteristically tall, narrow, and slightly square subcategory of sans serif typefaces, including all those designed before the 20th century and all revivals based on them.
Right.
And geometric is a highly mechanized and precise subcategory of sans serif typefaces whose letter forms are based on geometric shapes like circles, rectangles, and triangles, and all the revivals based on them.
Okay. What did you have? Did you also have humanist?
I've got humanist script and display as well.
Display. Go ahead. Talk about humanist sans serif.
So grotesque and geometric are also page 117. Humanist is 117 as well. Humanist sans serif type is the most organic subcategory of sans serif typefaces, which were designed based on the proportions of the original humanist Roman typefaces and all the revivals based on them.
Okay.
Okay,
And
script.
script.
Yep. Script, page 131. A family of typefaces, including all those designed to look like they were hand-rendered, even though they were not. And lastly, display, page 138. Designed in the early 19th century for use in advertising posters that were also illustrative of specific art movements, including revivals based on a wide range of historically significant typefaces.
Okay. So would you ever use a display type font to print for example, the writing in a novel?
No.
Right. Okay. So mainly for headline, little fancy, not easy to read in a headline, hard to read, like if you're trying to read it in a newspaper. Okay. Everyone turn back to page 119 real quick. There's a nice chart there. It talks about universe, the typeface, and it talks about all the different versions. When I talk about extended and condensed, it almost looks like a periodic table with a very condensed version of style of universe in the very upper right-hand corner and a very extended bold style in the lower left-hand corner. So you can do all kinds of things with some of these fonts, and they've been done by other people. Helvetica, if we talk about, and one of the things you guys have run, we've already talked about, and I think Nick mentioned this, typefaces like Helvetica created before the 20th century, the grotesque typefaces. So sometimes the word modern is used to describe typefaces or anything in art or graphic design. Does anyone know when modern is? And that's a trick question. I don't think it's in the book.
Is it 19th, like at the beginning of the 20th century?
Yeah, so modern means 20th century. So today, if a new typeface was created, you guys create a new typeface now in 2020, is that a modern typeface?
It's
No.
postmodern, right?
Postmodern, or so you can say postmodern. So that would be described my next thing. So we're now in the 21st century. What's another word besides postmodern that we could use? Anyone have an idea besides that people use? Usually futuristic means more in the future than the current day. So in general, this century, the century you're in, is contemporary. So modern's the 20th century, and then contemporary moves forward to where you are now. So it's a weird little, sometimes strange that modern is in the past. Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out was, everyone look at the script fonts on 132, 133. You have to really be conscious of when you use a script font, and they're like handwriting, but they're quite difficult to read. So obviously, wedding invitations is a time that people use them. There are times to use a script font, but they're in theory easy to read in some ways. But I view them more as a display font than something you would use in a newsletter or a publication of some type. You have to be careful. It's a little hard to read. Okay. Questions on any of those definitions? If you notice, if you look at the display fonts in like 141, as Nick mentioned, they do correspond to some art movements. For example, there's a display font called Arts and Crafts, which we talked about in chapter 1. And that's just a display font that they use to look like that art period. And so there's Art Nouveau ones, there's Old West ones, things like that. So there's a lot of different ones that are like a specific period. There's ones that look like they're from the 70s and disco font. So they're very specific. A lot of designers, and you guys might be doing this for your portfolio. It's pretty easy to do a display font, to create one. There's a lot of crazy ones. Like I was just looking at all the ones based on, basically masking tape and duct tape. It's very interesting. It's pretty easy to create a display font because it doesn't have to work in all situations. So for example, Times New Roman is an older font, but it it's a very readable font, and a lot of newspapers have a font that is similar to Times New Roman. For example, the Los Angeles Times. So anyone have a guess about how much the Los Angeles Times, about 6 years, redid all their fonts, their whole type family, they had a specific font created for them? Any guesses about how much they paid the designer to do that?
10 million.
Lower than that. But still, more than $1 million. Any other guesses? It was $6 million to do the font 6 years ago. So I don't know what it would cost now. Yeah, so typefaces, if you are a type designer and can design a typeface specifically for something like that gets used a lot, that's big money. And I know a lot of people, you can design typefaces and sell them because you can license them and get paid when people use them. There are a lot more typefaces than there used to be, but doing a commission typeface like that is very lucrative. Okay. Questions? So we sort of have questions.
This is a really random question. I don't even know if you'll be able to answer it. Really.
Sure.
So, does anyone get paid for like Times New Roman nowadays?
So any big font like Times New Roman, actually everyone listed in this book under transitional or modern Egyptian, some company owns the rights to Times New Roman now. Some type foundries, like in France, they created those fonts, not Times New Roman, but let's say Dido. and over the years have been purchased. So they still own that font and get, every time someone uses it in Photoshop, they get, 3 cents.
Huh.
So yes, someone is getting paid every time. Now, for example, in Photoshop pays Times New Roman to include it in their list of fonts. And there's actually, I'm going to share later in the quarter. I think I already have it. I could share in one of the other future modules. I can't remember which one. You can buy other more specific font suitcases where you can get less available fonts, so that when you do a logo, you're not using Times New Roman or Palatino or Garamond or Gaudi. You're using a more proprietary font that you have to pay for. And that's one thing designers do once you're out and professional and have some money. You buy a set of fonts that you can use to have your fonts look a little bit different from the normal ones. But yeah, every time someone's using those fonts, they are getting paid. Someone owns them. Yes. Good question. And I have in a future font or a future module I could share with, there are some great sites where you can go see very specific display fonts or fonts that you can buy, and then you can buy the use of them yourself. Or you could design a font and have it on websites where people buy fonts, and you can get paid when people download your font.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I do not know, none of my students, I mean, you have to be quite experienced. You have to be, I think it's quite tough to design a font, for example, like the New York, Los Angeles Times, because you have to have so many versions of it. I know famous designers that do that. None of my students have ever been able to design a font that's gotten used that much. Although I know quite a few designers that have designed display fonts that get used, and they get paid for it. So it's interesting. Okay. So we have 2 different assignments really based on chapter 3, and they're just slightly different. One is the regular old vocabulary, which we have gone over most of it. We didn't go over the last few questions that just talk about specific fonts. And then the assignment for this week, which is due Sunday, assignment 4, which you have to download, is asking for a little bit more detail. In the first questions, it shows you a font, and then you have to identify what type of font it is. You don't have to say the name of the font. You have to say, is it transitional? Is it old style? Is it black letter? And say why you think that. And then toward the end of the assignment, there's big squares, and it asks you to draw certain things, like draw a humanist sans serif letter. So then you have to draw a humanist sans serif, and obviously there's several examples in the book to go from. So either you're looking at an example I've already given you, or you're drawing from a description that I'm giving you. This is asked for humanist sans serif, transitional, geometric sans serif, all those things. So there's 2 assignments. One's just the regular vocabulary, which is just the written definitions. And then assignment 4, the type classification assignment, is some definitions, but also some drawing that you have to scan those in. Questions on that? As you're doing this assignment, one of the things that you need to be ready to answer, it's a favorite interview question that people ask when you're looking for your first job. They will ask you, what are your top 5 typefaces? And they want to know, what are your top 5? So you need to have that ready. So as you're doing this assignment, start to think, what is number 1? What is number 2? Come up with a list. It is not a homework assignment right now. It's a discussion thing we'll do later on. And you want to have some it's good to have some typefaces that are recognizable names. But also perhaps you want to, as we're going down the quarter a little bit farther, have some typefaces that are a little less recognizable. And some people would say don't include Comic Sans. As you notice, that is not one of the faces in the book. because people will say that's the worst. I know students that intentionally say that's one of their top 5 and then explain why, just to wake up the person interviewing them. So that is one of the things I'm going to ask you in the future is to, by the end of this class, to have your top 5 typefaces, type families, and why. Why is it in your top 5? You're going to use it for what? You like using it for this, you like using it for that. It's completely up to you, though. So that is what we're eventually want you to be able to say quite easily your top 5 typefaces. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
And has anyone gone to like the websites where you have the really I hate to use the word geeky, but t-shirts you can buy that are all typeface related? Have you guys seen any of those where it says it's basically jokes, but it's font jokes? Has anyone seen any of those? Later in the quarter, we'll go look those up. But there's several. One of them has they list their top 5 fonts on the back of the t-shirt. You have to be. It's definitely a graphic design specific humor. I'll try to find that website and share that with you. Okay. If no other questions, those are the things to do this week. I think I asked Daniel to turn your 27th letter back in, but make sure you've turned that in. I think all of you guys have. And then do the normal vocabulary, and then the assignment 4, which is the type classification assignment. And I think the vocabulary is due Friday, and the assignment 4 classification is due Sunday. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Next, wait.
And question? And we will have our studio on Wednesday. We really don't have a project going on. Some people are behind, not you guys, because you guys have that. So it could be that I will be working with other people on getting their 27th letter that is late, but to get that done, because some people have not done that yet. Okay, oh. I will talk to y'all not on Wednesday if you guys are set, but if you have questions, you can come on. But next Monday in class.
Thank you.
Actually, I wanted to ask.
Sure.
If it keeps giving me this issue of like converting my final into the PDF and showing up small.
Yeah.
That's
a good question. So as you convert, it asks you a bunch of questions. And one of them is the size, not in like inches, 8 by 10, but the size of the file. You might just click larger instead of smaller, click medium. You might have accidentally clicked small. That's why it might be saving small. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay, because when I save to a PDF, it'll ask me the size of the file, and sometimes I go too fast. And if you click small, there's a click you can make that might be doing that to you, and you just have to make sure you click a larger file. That could be one issue. Trying to think what other things could be causing that. Besides that,
it could just be the fact that he started like the actual like page he was designing stuff on is small in general.
Is small. Could be. You could do that. You could save it to a larger, like copy all the information, open a new document and save it to a larger document. Make sure it's the right size document.
See,
that's a thought.
I looked at the artboard size and it was 8 by 10.
It was still 8 by 10. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really not sure why it's
interesting. And it's showing up on the artboard while you're in Illustrator. It's showing up filling the artboard.
Yeah, and I have no issues with my with my computer design one because I did a similar size and had to convert it to PDFs, and it turned out fine.
Okay. You could always save it as a JPEG.
Yeah, I could try that.
Okay. Maybe it's just something in the conversion. Try that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good question. Yeah, sometimes things are wonky and you don't know why it's doing that.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk to you all on Wednesday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.